Hello, everybody. You're watching / listening to the McAllister Hours. I'm your host, as always, Cole McAllister. Today, we are joined by actually the first female rapper to come into the studio, Sterling Banks.
Hello.
How you doing today?
I am doing good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Kind of a weird, rushed Saturday as always. It's actually my only day off, and I sacrifice it for podcasting. So yeah, always crazy here. Before we get started, I guess I want to ask you, what's some of your background? Is Sterling Banks just your legal name, or is there a story behind that? What's going on with that?
Sterling like the Archer for all of my Archer fans out there.
I haven't seen that one, but I've heard good things.
It's very good. I'm a big fan of H. John Benjamin, though, so I like all of the H. John Benjamin productions.
Now, does he do Bob's Burgers and stuff? Oh, I love Bob's Burgers. That was a great show. Really clever. Anyway, sorry. Go back to your name. So that's part of the Sterling, and then the Banks is just
yeah.
Cool. So where'd you start? Did you start here in Iowa? Are you from here originally? What's some of your background?
So I'm born and raised in Waterloo, Iowa. Musically wise, I started playing piano when I was 5. And took 20 years of classical piano lessons. And then in college, I was in a bunch of different bands, an acoustic duo. We did some hip-hop stuff. I was in a disco band once. That was a lot of fun.
Damn, that's interesting.
So just did a lot of different band things throughout my college time. And then once COVID hit, I started my own company called Ladies Bay Productions. I do photography, videography, graphic design, audio engineering, that kind of stuff. Wow. So I was doing that, and then when COVID hit, I was like, I'm going to be the first to go. Nobody wants these services during a pandemic. So I wanted to redesign my company more towards marketing for artists. And I didn't really know much about it. So I was like, what better way than to use myself as a guinea pig? So I started doing my solo hip hop career, and then I just kind of never left.
Damn. So you doing hip hop has been more of a recent thing then?
I was in a hip hop band in my earlier college years. I didn't do a whole lot of original hip hop work then. I did do a lot of covers and mashups of hip hop songs. We put one album out that had quite a bit of hip hop on it. Other than that, this has been my first real dive into hip hop.
That's cool. That's awesome. So you started when you were 5, you said piano. Mm-hmm. So you have had a wide array of experience, in music, before hip hop. And I feel like that's a really fundamental thing with artists, having that different background. What kind of music? You said classical music. Do you still play that at all? Piano?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, cool.
I actually smashed my finger in a door. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, so I don't play as much anymore.
Oh, damn, that sucks.
But I do still try to, and recently I've started getting up in the morning and practicing again and trying to get back into it. So I do still play that. I also play the guitar. And then I suppose I play trumpet, French horn, and saxophone.
No way. That's
but I haven't played them since high school, so I don't know if it would be really that great if I tried. It might be a little rusty.
Damn. So I guess I'm just curious, how much of your focus is on hip hop specifically, and how much of it, is towards everything else?
When I first started, it was very focused on hip hop, and the more that I've gotten into it, the more I've kind of branched out in different areas where I'll do songs that are completely just singing, or I'll do songs that are a mixture of singing and rapping, or I'll do melodic rap, just kind of trying to test the waters and see what I like and find a lane that really, really works for me. But it's primarily mostly within the hip hop realm. Okay. I do a little bit of sync music on the side. So when I do that, I'm kind of it has nothing to do with hip hop. It's just whatever, blues.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I like that shit too though. And that's kind of a core of hip hop. The jazz blues, that's a really common bass for that jazz and all that. So I guess like what are some of your influences then? I guess both since you've had the background in things besides hip hop, like what have been some of your influences through all that?
I really, really like Mark Battles. I like Lil Sims. I like just kind of that more underground hip hop sound. I don't listen to a lot of mainstream hip hop. So I work at the studio. I audio engineer for a lot of rappers, and they'll come in and they'll be like King Von, Da Baby type beats, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard a song by any of these people. I don't know who they are. I heard my first Pop Smoke and Da Baby song the other day, and I was like, oh, okay. But it's just not really the style I listen to. I like a lot more conscious and underground sound. I like to connect with the lyrics, so that's kind of the vibe I go for. And what I'm inspired by, I try and have a connection with the lyrics that I'm putting out to people, like in the hopes that they will connect with it.
Well, and that's really all you can do as a hip hop artist, because I feel like when you're putting out lyrics that people can tell are fake, I mean, they can tell they're fake and they're not going to connect as much. And I definitely, listening to your music, like I can tell there's a lot of, passion in what you do and like a lot of personal experience. You're not just, saying whatever.
All of my music is stories. They're about somebody. I'll be the first to Taylor Swift somebody.
Damn. So I guess like what's some of your writing process then with your hip hop? Like how do you go about that?
Originally, when I first started writing, it was a lot more so very much like practicing an instrument, where I'd write a line and then I'd say the line over and over and over again until I came up with the next one. And then I'd do those two lines over and over again until I came up with the next one. And I've been trying more lately to like break out of that, where like sometimes I'll go down to the studio and put a beat on and just kind of like hum a melody that I think are like like do the synchronization of what I want it to sound like without actually putting words to it, or freestyling. I did a little freestyling in the last couple of weeks where cool. I'm just like I'm just gonna go for it, see what happens. So trying to break out of just writing, because originally, I mean, I am a singer-songwriter, and so I'm very functional in that way, and I'm trying to break away from that and move more into different writing styles. It's
a different animal, for sure. I can actually, when you're saying the da-da-da-da, I can really relate to that, because, I think, because I have like a background in instrumental music too, like myself, so I can kind of relate to you in that way, where you kind of think of it differently. Like you think of hip hop as an instrument, like you think of somebody's lyrics as an instrument. I think not everybody thinks like that. I think that's a powerful way to approach your music and approach your craft. So have you performed at all? Like, have you gotten? I know you were scheduled to perform a little bit back, and that fell through, I think, right? But have you? I know. I guess you started around COVID, so maybe you haven't. I don't know. Have you gotten to perform?
I have. I've performed a handful of times since COVID. I mean, obviously, like in my earlier college years, I was in different bands and stuff, so I performed a lot with that. But since COVID, I've probably done 5 to 10 shows still. Not very many. I mean, there's just not really the shows to be done. But I have gotten to perform a couple times, and it's been really dope. I like being on stage, though. That's like my spot. That's where I feel the best at.
So that's where you're more comfortable. You don't get like stage fright or anything like that?
No.
Damn. I wish I was that lucky. I always get the anxiety and like, feeling under the spotlight. It's a lot. I don't know. But I think people that are rappers are people that are just built for that naturally, And, well, I guess you have experience, too, from, like, did you perform a lot when you were younger, when you were doing, I guess you said you performed classical piano, right?
It wasn't necessarily like we had recitals and stuff that we had to do, but a lot of it was more like competitions. So, like, we'd have a competition once or twice a year where we'd have to like play songs, and then they would judge us on it. And one year I got 100, and that was super dope. I think that was the last year I actually competed. I did get 100, and I was like, all right, I'm the man.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what you described, it seems like you're kind of all over the place. You're very multi-talented. That's really cool. So your last album, Disassembly, get into that. What was the process? Like, did you work with somebody on the beats? Like someone that was close, or did you kind of just buy your beats? Like, how did you go about that process of making that? And what's it about, would you say?
So originally it started as I kind of knew when I first started putting out singles, I knew that eventually I was going to want to put together an album. Like, I had 3 or 4 singles out, but I wanted to be able to have like a full body of work. So when somebody looks me up, they can like get a broad idea of what my sound is. And actually, it came up in my time hop today, actually, the video of me, because a lot of times when I'm writing too, I'll like take a video and send it to all my friends before I go to the studio and record and be like, oh, look what I'm working on. So a year ago today, actually, I wrote the song Better that's on Disassembly. And from there, so that song's really about like, so I am still married-ish. We're going through divorce right now.
Oh,
so
I've been there. It sucks.
But we've been separated for a year, and Better was kind of like about, I'd come back to Iowa, and I was just feeling so much better about everything. So once I wrote that song, that's when I was like, okay, now I have this idea. Like, I really want to create a body of work that is explaining my story of kind of disconstructing myself and redesigning myself in this like new chapter of my life. So I started working on different songs for it. That beat in particular that I found for Better it wasn't somebody I had ever heard of. It was just one that I had found online. A couple of the beats are from Lyrical. He's my boss and runs the studio.
Oh, cool.
So he'd made a couple of those beats, but while I was working on the album, I stumbled across a producer named Homage, and he's got like the kind of boom bap style. And that's where the boom bap ones on the album, those are all his. And so once I found him, every time I would listen to any of his beats, like immediately I'd be able to write a song like that. Damn. Like, I'd be like pouring out songs. So a lot of the songs on the album are Homage beats. Now more so though, past Disassembly, I've actually started making beats myself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What DAW do you use?
I use FL Studio.
Oh, cool. That's classic. I started on that myself. I
never had. See, I was like in junior high, I made a techno album that was cool. through GarageBand.
Oh yeah, classic.
So
that's
I've
classic too.
actually been more versed in like GarageBand and Logic, but when learning, I don't know, everybody uses FL, so I was like, all right, I'll jump on the train. So now I'm making beats out of FL, and I'm trying to exclusively use mine. I do like a lot of cover songs and stuff like that for content wise, and I'll usually just use like free YouTube beats for that. But anything that I put out, I'm like trying to only use my own beats.
So there's a separation between like your social media posts and like your artistry. I appreciate that. Definitely. Going back to like you said you're an audio technician. How'd you get started in that? Did you go to school? Did you just pick it up?
So I first went to school. I'm actually in school right now as well. Cool. But when I first went to school, I went for digital mass media. So I learned photography, videography, and audio engineering. I didn't do a whole lot with the audio engineering. It wasn't something that particularly interested me at the time. I was more interested in doing the photography and videography. And then when I moved back home and was hanging out at the studio more, my boss was just kind of like, why don't you learn how to engineer? Like, you could make some money. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. And it really helped too, where I would like constantly have to like have him come down and record me when I was doing my stuff. And so it really cut out that like middleman of like, now I record myself. I don't have anybody else record me. So it just makes it a lot easier in the creative process. And I get to make some money, so it's not a bad thing.
That's awesome. I truly believe that like in the future, we're all just gonna, like, the people who are really gonna make it in those industries are the people who know how to do everything. Like, and it's kind of sad in a way, because I feel like a lot of hip hop is a lot of the collaborative process, but I feel like in the next 20, 30 years, we're just gonna see that all go away, because everyone could do, not completely, but like to a large extent, like that's just kind of good. People are just going to do it their own. They're going to have their own laptop and their own mic, and they're going to.
Well, it's coming to the time of independent artists. I mean, anymore, like, what's the point of having a record label? I've had a couple different opportunities where I could, like, go meet with record label people, but I'm like, what honestly are you going to give me? Like, I can record myself. I can produce my own beats. I can mix and master my stuff. I can create the visuals. I can run my social media. Like, what exactly are you doing besides taking money from me in the end, you know? So I think it's really, now is the time, especially like YouTube University. If you don't know how to do something, learn how to do it. So I think now is really the time for independent artists to flourish. I'm interested to see, especially as things are opening up more from COVID, like what that's going to look like for independent artists, and what, because it's not quite that the field is leveled, but the field is more leveled because of COVID. Like all of the tours and the festivals and everything that happened, where everybody was wiped off the board, not just independent artists. So I'm interested to see now how that, when things start, who's going to come out on top and be like, look, I was prepping. I knew this shit was coming back. Can I swear? I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
I knew this was coming back, and I've been prepping for it, and I'm ready. I mean, that's what I've been working on.
That's cool. I do think that the show's going to come back in the summer for sure. And, you know, I do like what you're saying and appreciate that, because I think, you know, it's interesting. Like you said, like everyone got knocked off. Like when you direct everyone's attention to media and like Spotify and like, you know, everyone kind of has their own plateau. Obviously there's the algorithm working against some people. I think that's probably the remaining grasp that record deals have, is like they have the tools that can promote you. I mean, if, you know, a bad, not that I'm saying about you obviously, but like a bad artist going to a record deal could still do better in theory than like someone who's good who isn't in that situation. So that's probably the last standing thing.
But
for
realistically, it's all just money. They just have the amount of money to dump in. And I'm like, all right, well, let me spend a year saving like 50 bands and I'll promote my own music. Like,
damn. No, I really like the independent entrepreneur energy you have. I think more people, you know, because it's a trap, especially in hip hop, people like look like, you know, shoot for the record deal. I want to get that check, you know. People, you know, there's something someone once said is that independent artists who wait a decade or more to, you know, make it are going to be way happier than that guy who just, you know, makes it in 2 years and gets that check. But, you know, then they got that, you know, that's the height of the career. Usually that's the height of the career, and there's really nowhere else to go from that.
And they end up falling way off and usually in debt. And
yeah. Look at Nicolas Cage.
I think there's a lot to the music industry that artists don't really understand, though. Like, I have this conversation a lot with people where a majority of it is a business. And so, like, you can be as creative as you want. And, like, look at me. I'm a creative person. Literally everything I do is creative. I can't work a 9 to 5 or do corporate things. Like, I'm very creative driven. But it's still a business, and you have to have that business mindset, and you have to understand what's going on in the business. Like, I have a lot of people that come in and record with me that only use YouTube beats and never buy the lease for it and never put their songs on streaming. But even, well, then once you put your songs on streaming and you buy the beat, the producer still gets 50% of that. Like, all of these steps that people don't really understand are a part of the process, that I'm like, hey, can we have a nice little Sterling's table where we sit down and I'm like, look, here's the reality of it. Yeah. You're not going to make money realistically. And it's going to be a while, and it's going to be a huge investment before you see that money back.
Yeah. I think I've made $2 on Spotify. Yeah, it's really hard. I had a, speaking of money, I had to get, when I was in college, I was a jazz guitar guy. My teacher, he said he knew someone who had a hit radio single like back in the 80s and 90s. And he got a stack of checks for this tall that was 1 cent.
I would imagine, yeah, because it was
They
all
just give
set
a
by
check. Yeah, they give it every time there was a radio play. They would just send a check, so you'd be getting these checks for like a tenth of a cent. Whatever, it's a fickle bitch.
Oh my god! And streaming is like, I'm interested. First of all, let me start on streaming.
Yeah.
Streaming is the bane of my existence. I was so excited when I like first started putting music out on streaming and became an artist, and I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna make money as an artist. I'm so excited. And then you see like the numbers that come back from streaming, and you're like, oh. This isn't real. So streaming is just the bane of my existence because it's just it's a battle. But I'm interested to see. So like we were talking about this at the studio the other day, where it used to be CD sales. You know, everything was CDs, and then it kind of turned into like LimeWire and Napster, where you would download and burn the CDs and stuff. And now everything's switched over to streaming. Like, what's next? What's after streaming?
Everything's free. You don't make any money. No, I hope not. No, but I appreciate what you're saying about business, because like it's kind of like I said before, like any jackass can get a laptop and a mic and make music, but it's not just being creative. And that's the sad part, is there are those like Mozart type people who like are just in the corners and like they're never gonna get they're never gonna get what they deserve, maybe. But that's the industry. It's a fickle bitch. So let me ask you this: you being a female rapper, because like I said, you're the first one we've had in here, and I think maybe I'm making assumptions, but I feel like that there's probably a different experience attached to that versus maybe a male rapper. I guess I'm just curious, like, do you have a different perspective being a female rapper?
That's an interesting question. I would say, as my experience of being a female rapper, I've definitely made it a priority to stay true to my sound. So my sound is kind of like manly and aggressive and
like Lil' Kim.
Like not always super receivable to people, because it's just not it's not like the female rappers that you hear. And like I don't have a problem with sexuality or being open or anything like that. Like, I'd say some nasty shit in my songs. But I'm also, like, not super interested in selling myself sexually to be successful. Like, if that's the only reason that you're here supporting me, then that's not the point of my music. Like, the point of my music is to speak my truth and to talk my shit and go on with my day. So it's been an interesting journey to find the happy medium of, I do want to be receivable, and I do want people to be like, yeah, that's a sound I can listen to. I like that sound, while still staying true to, like, I have a very like Greaves and Russ and Eminem type sound.
Yeah.
Which isn't, from a short little girl, is just not the most receivable, Yeah. So trying to find that happy medium of like playing around with sounds and finding something that doesn't, to me, feel like selling out.
I like that. You can look at like the wet ass pussy Cardi B kind of stuff, and you can think what you want about that, but I appreciate what you're saying, because like even Lil' Kim kind of did would sell out her sexuality, and then that's not a bad thing. Male rappers do it too, but you can do it too much, and there I think, and this might be judgmental or whatever, but I think there is that stereotype of female rappers where they're just talking about that the whole time.
Exactly. I feel like it's the idea with the association with female rappers is that it's got to be very sexual based, because I mean, like, what else are we supposed to talk about? We don't have
thoughts or feelings. That doesn't exist.
So to me, I'm just like, no, I'm gonna talk my shit. I like to think a lot of my songs are very like big dick energy, and it's a lot of big dick and fuck you energy. So I'm like,
like I said, kind of an unexpected presence.
Right. It might be WAP, but you ain't getting it.
Yeah, bucket and mop.
Don't get me wrong, though. I fucking love that song. That is like our pool league anthem.
Are you familiar with Ben Shapiro at all?
Yes.
Did you see his rendition on the Wet Ass Pussy song? Oh God, pull that up, Molly. Yes, do it. I don't
know
care.
if I have, because I've seen so many different renditions.
Oh, it's so funny. So he did this whole thing where he was criticizing it and talking about sexuality and all that, but like he refused to say the words. Make sure you do like the song, not the do that second one.
Yeah.
So they did a compilation of him like reading out the lyrics and they put it to the song. It's hilarious. Oh shit. Here. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick little break here to figure out technical difficulties. We have to do this. Do 4. Hit 4. We're back.
Better than ever.
The host of the podcast is a moron. All right. Yeah, we gotta watch this. What else? WAP. Somebody. You gotta go back to the beginning.
I know, I did, but then.
Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. I said certified freak. 7 days a week. Wet ass P-word. Make that pull-out game weak. Yeah, you effing with some wet-ass P-word. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet-ass P-word. Give me everything you've got for this wet-ass
He's too PG.
N-word, catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard. Put this P-word right in your face. Swipe your nose like a credit card. Pop on top if I want to ride. Add to a Hegel, well, it's inside. Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes. This P-word is wet, come take a dive. It continues along these lines.
He's like, it continues along these lines.
I'm already going to hell for saying these words. That guy was just bullied too much in high school, I think. I think that's what it is. I didn't get laid till I was 28. Like, I hate everyone else who does. So you mentioned in your music and said on social media that you're a mother. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm curious, what's it like being a mother? How old is the child? Give me all the details. The parasite.
I have 2 crotch goblins. One is 2.5 years old. Her name is Moira.
Oh, the terrible twos, right?
Oh, she's not even the terrible twos. The scary part is she's like freakishly smart. Like she can
oh shit.
She can count to 20 in English and Chinese. She knows her colors, her letters, her shapes. Like it's just terrifying. It's
Chinese. That's the way of the future though. I have a little cousin who knows Chinese actually. He did the same way. Learned it young.
Very, very scary. She's super smart. And that's more scary than the terrible twos. I'm like, oh gosh, we're in for a ride here. And then my son is 8. His name is Vincent. It's pretty cool being a mom. I like my kids. I don't want more, but
You
I like my kids. Mine alone.
So, not to get too personal, but you mentioned being divorced. Has that been a challenge at all? Like with 2 kids, or you handle it pretty well? Or
Well, so Vincent was actually before I got married.
Oh, okay.
I was 20 when I had him. Yeah, 'cause I'm 28. So I was 20 when I had him, which definitely gave me a lot of perspective on a lot of things. Obviously, having kids will make you grow up really fast. So, and I had kind of already, like, when I was a teenager, I'd already gone through the, like, partying and shit like that. So,
got that out of your system.
Yeah, by the time I had my kid and went to college, I was like, oh, that's what you guys are doing? Cool. Okay. I did that in high school. So, it gave me a lot of perspective. And then I got married and we had my daughter. So it's been with my son. His dad and I work together seamlessly. Like, it's just a really nice relationship. We get along. We don't go to court or anything like that. So, we just kind of get along and spend one day a week as a family.
Well, hey, that's good that you guys can be mature. You know, me included, I feel like there are a lot of people who would have been other relationships and would not have gone that amicably. You know, you could list horror stories for days. So it's good. It's good, you know, and that's good for the kids too.
Well, to me, the most important thing, like, honesty, obviously, is the most important thing to me. I'm like, let's just say how it is, honesty. But up there with honesty, family is super important to me. So to me, like, when having a kid is like, even if you don't work out with that person, like, it's your family, and it's more about what's best for the kids and holding up that family value so they can go on and functionably have a family someday, instead of like not growing up with those views and then come knocking on your door when they're 28 and are like, why the fuck can't I have a family? I'm super dysfunctional. You know, I'm like, let's nip that in the butt now.
You're hitting a little too close to home.
Don't mind Sterling the therapist. You know. Do you want to talk about it?
No, I do worry because, like, I'm approaching 26. I don't know. I feel like you gotta be like, before 30, you gotta like be really getting into the steps of having kids. I don't want to be 60 and have my kid like graduating high school. You know, I want to get him like out of the house. So,
however, it has
That's too soon.
it has become a more recent thing. Like, in the last 50, 60 years, it's become a lot more common to have kids at a younger age. And I feel like, especially as women, we're pressured to have kids at a younger age. Like, before 30, you have to have kids before you're 30. And I'm like, the fuck I do. Oh my God, I want to be financially stable and figure my shit out. Like, oh, so I definitely think that, it'll be nice. Like, I'll be, Morris 2, so I'll be like 46, I think, when she's out of high school. Is that right? I can't do the math. But I'll be in my 40s when she gets out of high school, and I'll still have half my life to live. Yeah, so that'll be nice. But at the same time, both my children were accidents. So, plannedly, I probably would have waited a little bit longer before having my children.
Well, what if, I guess. You know? But everything, you know, it happens. Things happen. You know, and you know, despite the stereotype of like having kids in that manner, it's actually a really good thing, I think, because you know, as the years go on, like, our generation is like at the lowest rate for having kids, or, you know, even having sex in general. Oh,
really?
Oh, it's so. You want to look that up, Molly? What the rate? Oh, it's like you thought the 50s were bad. We're way worse. Nobody's having sex anymore, or having kids. And there's, you know, plastics in water. That's
What exactly?
What would you look up, you say? Rate of childbirth. Birth.
Close enough.
It's Google, it'll figure it out.
True. No mortality.
Google says, y'all gonna die.
We're all screwed. That's the thing to take away from this, is we're all screwed. It's gonna be some children animated
It's
shit.
The Matrix. I made her watch The Matrix for the first time 2 weeks ago. She's never seen it before. And now everything, I'm just like, it's The Matrix.
Do you think we're living in a simulation?
I don't really know what I think. I'll be honest. I don't think I have the brain capacity to really even figure that out. But I'm like, something's going on. I mean, it's so hard to, like, I sat down with my dad a couple weeks ago and had a conversation about, like, religion. And he's like a Christian, and I was kind of like explaining my beliefs, and he's like, well, you're pretty much a Christian. And I was like, I don't really think I am, though. Like, there's a lot that goes on in Christianity that I'm just not really down for. Like, I believe in a higher power. I believe that there's like God and the devil in all of us. I believe that it's all about energy and karma. Like, what you put out is what you're going to get back. So I guess if that's Christianity.
Well, that's kind of the thing that, because I am not, like, kind of on the same vibe that I think you're putting off, like, or putting out. I am not a fan of organized religion. So I think, like, you can be your own person. You can believe in whatever deity you want, and that still makes you that. You know, like Christianity, there's like whatever, like 1,000 different, like 10,000 different denominations or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Well, and that's the one thing that we couldn't agree upon was that, like, I believe in a higher power and whatnot, but he's like, but you have to believe in Jesus Christ. And I was like, to me, honestly, like, the Bible was written by a bunch of like old men, and then it was like translated by a bunch of old white men. Like, it's iffy for me. And he's like, well, you have to believe. And I'm like, but I don't think, if I were to go along this Christianity path, I don't necessarily think that I would go to hell just because I don't believe in Jesus. Like, I'm a good person. I do the right thing, like, and if I believe in the higher power, then why is it necessarily that it has to be Jesus to get me across the gate? I'm like, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
There's a George Carlin bit where he's like, he's talking about Jesus. It's like, you have a list of 10 things to do, and if you disobey any of those rules, you rot and burn in an eternity of fiery hell. But he loves you.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's definitely like, like the God-fearing Christians, like you should not, in my opinion. So I'm an atheist personally. I don't think anyone should worship a deity that they're scared of and afraid of. Like, yeah,
ruling by fear is like hard pass.
Yeah, some tyranny type shit. Okay, so the birth rate. The U.S. birth rate dropped to about 50 births per 1,000 women of childbearing age, lowest rate on record. The rate is half of what it was in the early 1960s. Holy shit. The birth rate for 15 to 19-year-olds dropped 8% from 2019. It's fallen almost every year since 1991.
Wow. So what does that say about us? Are we're
not focused
smarter?
on kids? Well, it's weird because there's, there is kind of the theory that, like, there are too many people, which I agree with, but they say that the birth rate is actually below that, like, because there's like a median, like you can have this many people in concurrence with this many people dying, and everything's still balanced out, but we're actually below that point. So it's interesting. And this is kind of a tangent, but plastics, they're actually showing have an effect on bearing children.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started about bearing children, man. Birth control, the fucking devil. I don't believe in it at all.
Damn.
I'm like, I can't say it enough to the women everywhere of the world. Please stop taking birth control. First of all, you're not going to trip and fall and land on anybody and fucking knock yourself up. It is not your responsibility to not knock yourself up. And you should not be destroying your innards to not have a baby. Like, oh my gosh. It's
Damn.
so bothersome to me. But that being said, on the total flip side of the coin, I lived in Minnesota, up in Minneapolis, and after I had my daughter, I got my tubes tied. Like, I'm good on kids. But I saw something recently in Iowa where if you don't have any kids and you're under the age of 30, they won't let you get your tubes tied. And I'm like,
oh, damn.
How is this even legal? What? You've got to be kidding me. That's asinine to me. I'm mind boggled that you, what? I can't even.
Yeah, there's definitely like a controlling mechanism there. I wanted to get my tubes tied when I was like 20 because I was like, isn't that?
That's no.
No.
I thought that was for guys too. Am I full of shit?
vasectomies for guys. Getting your tubes tied.
Isn't that the same thing though?
No.
Aren't there two tubes that you? No, that's only for
I
women.
mean, it's technically a tube,
They don't get
but tubes tied refers to female.
Okay.
And you can reverse a vasectomy.
Yeah.
You
true.
can like kind of maybe reverse, depending on the kind of tubes tied you get. Like you can't reverse mine. They straight cut them bitches out. Like,
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask because I've heard that that's like a really risky procedure for women. Like, or I mean, not really risky, but riskier than it is for men.
Yeah, I think it's a little different, but I don't think they can. It's a lot harder to reverse just the tying. Like if they just tie the tubes, it's a lot harder to reverse that for women. Whereas like for me, they just cut it out. Like there's no reversal of that because they're just gone. So if you wanted to know all of my medical history, let's have that conversation.
we have it on tape here. I can.
Honesty.
Yeah, honesty is key. We like honesty here at the McAllister Hours. No, but talking about you're going back to the birth control. I do think that there is a correlation between like, because it said 1991. I mean, that was probably around the time that there's kind of like the revitalization of like, I guess abortion was from the 70s, but like the 90s were big for like the feminist movements. Like they promoted a lot of birth control. I think they improved a lot of science on that. So it's I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. It's just kind of an interesting correlation that, I don't know.
I just wish we could
People don't
find
want
a
kids.
better method than birth control, because especially like the new ones where it's like you stick them in your arms and stuff and it's in there for like 3 to 6 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And then there's like women who are getting like cancers and tumors and shit from this stuff, and I'm like, stop. Or they're just not able, once they do decide that they don't want to take the birth control anymore, then they can't have babies because it's like the
I've
birth
heard
control.
that.
Yeah, right. I'm like, stop. Let's stop this. It's not Mother Nature. Just let Mother Nature be.
So let me ask you this then. For you, what would be a alternative to birth control for someone who...
Condoms. It's tried and true. it's how we do things, it works mostly, I guess. I feel like there's people who have still gotten pregnant even when they use condoms, but I don't know, the morning after pill maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That
Don't
shit's
have
expensive.
sex. No, have sex, please. Everybody should get laid.
Well, I was gonna say. I remember when Trump was still in office, he was pushing a lot of like abstinence only education. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ! Like, who thinks that still works? Like, we have the internet. Like a 12-year-old can Google porn and the entire world's open.
Even more than that, my son was 6, and I shit you not. He was avid on YouTube. He watched all the YouTube stuff, the people playing Minecraft and the Kinder Egg surprise shit. Oh my god! But he was an avid YouTube user, and it took him down this rabbit hole where it's not really like porn, like Pornhub, but
It's like softcore kind of.
Yeah, he was like finding pornographic things, and so then he started searching pornographic things. And I'm looking at all this, and I'm like, oh my god, like, he's 6. What the fuck? Like, I thought we would have this conversation when I found his Playboy magazines under his bed as a teenager, Nope, he's 6.
Hold off
We're having this conversation now. Okay.
Damn. That is a really interesting like moral dilemma with like the internet. And I'm not a fan of internet censorship necessarily, but you have to acknowledge that like pornography like a younger and younger age is bad. I not to get too personal, but I probably view pornography at a pretty early age too, like 8 or 9, but like 6, holy shit. Like you don't even really have a grasp on reality, let alone like sexuality and everything that goes into that, and you're just like wiring them for like these really intense crazy images, and like, yeah, we're fucked.
Well, and I think it goes beyond just sexuality. I think like the aggressiveness of video games and stuff like that. Like, he was probably 7 when his dad and I finally broke and let him start playing Fortnite. And now he's running around like doing that fucking Fortnite dance, and I'm like, shit, But just, it's the same concept. It's mass aggressiveness at a young age.
Yeah, with pornography too. Like that's some pretty, for a lot of it, it's really, aggressive and, strangling and all that kind of shit. That's definitely like, and if you, between two people, that's, unless that's what you're into, that's not usually what it is. So it's definitely like creating like a fake idea about sex. And it's definitely a problem.
And how do you censor that?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, like, is the better approach just to have a conversation? Like, but saying 6, like, how, like, what are you gonna like set them all up with that? Like 2, like at what point do you like? What's the like? There's no way to beat it. Like if it's there,
I feel like having the honest talks, but just being like self-aware enough to know like what they can and cannot handle at different ages. Like he was 5 when I got pregnant with his sister, and so we kind of had the talk with him then of like, mommies and daddies have sex, and that's where babies come from, and that was kind of the end of it. We didn't go into deep dark detail of how mommy and daddy made sex.
Well, plenty of that stuff at their age will go over their head too. Maybe,
but then just continuing to build on, like plant the seeds and then continuing to build on it as they get older, and having those conversations before they go somewhere else like the internet to look for the answers.
Yeah, exactly, because it's kind of, it's kind of the argument with like, legalization versus just, not making things illegal. It's like, are you, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Are you really helping them by just like trying to push everything, or is it better to just educate them and be like,
education is so key. Yeah. So I did a whole documentary on addiction.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So I did a documentary on addiction, and actually, I think it was in the 90s or early 2000s, Portugal legalized all drugs. And instead of incarcerating people for that, they used the money that was saved from mass incarceration and put that money towards being able to give rehabilitated people small business loans, or just strictly rehabilitating people back into society. So there's not this stigma that is attached with addiction to criminal. And so I think absolutely, I am so down for the legalization of everything. Like, just stop with this control shit, and if people are going to be addicted to drugs, yes, that's sad and that sucks, especially like hard drugs. But if you give them better outlets to rehabilitate themselves and not have this like nationwide stigma that if they
throwing them in a cage doesn't solve it.
Well, and even if they like go to rehab and get out, it's so hard for those people to get a job, and same thing with criminals too. Like it's so hard to get a job after that. Like we have such this stigma with things like that if you just kind of like break all of those barriers and be like, look, we're not gonna do this stigma thing anymore, then it's going to be a lot easier for people to reintegrate and figure their shit out instead of wasting their entire life.
Exactly. I don't think anyone should be locked in a cage for a nonviolent offense.
That part.
Even the people, I guess, unless there's a violent instance with a drug dealer, that just doesn't help anything. Like we're what, 50 years into this war on drugs? Has not done a single goddamn thing. Now there's more drugs, new drugs.
Well, it absolutely has done quite a lot, just not in our favor. I mean, look at like private prisons and the amount of money they're accumulating by pumping out inmates that are doing slave labor, basically. Like,
creates incentive. You could go to the. In this sense, it's a form of racism in the sense, like crack cocaine and cocaine. How there's that difference. Like the DEA is just another branch of government that has power, and it's just a way to control people and to profit. I mean, really, that's all it comes out to.
Capitalism. If you could destroy capitalism, I like to think that maybe someday I will play a part in redesigning what the system looks like. That's honestly the only reason I've ever wanted to do music, and to me, I absolutely, like, I am in it for the fame. I absolutely want to get famous. But it's not necessarily about the money. I'm more interested in having fame in order to have a platform to speak to people on a mass amount and have people listen to me and be like, look, stop taking birth control. Let's stop mass incarceration. Let's stop stigmatizing addiction. Like, let's fix the fucking system, you know? So I like to think that I'll play a role in changing the design of the system, but I'm also like, how? That's such a fucked up system.
Well, and it's kind of interesting in this day and age, you know, there seems to be a narrative. So, you know, I think the birth control thing wouldn't probably align with a lot of the mainstream narratives, you know. So that's kind of, you know, it's an interesting realm. It's like, you know, you have that platform, like like Joe Rogan. I don't know if you listen to him at all. Like, he's kind of like very recently, especially, like, he's definitely like pushed past the main, like he's bigger than the mainstream at this point. Like, his audience is just, it's huge. Like, he's like one of the few people in this country who can just say something that completely shoots past that narrative and it actually gets across to people. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the hope for all. I mean, that's the hope for me with this podcast too, you know, that, you know, different voices and different opinions can be heard, you know, and people come on here and I'm, you know, usually don't agree with at least some of what they're saying, but I still give them that voice and I give them that platform to do it because I think that's important. I think censoring people, you know, just because you don't like something that somebody says or how they view, I still think that they should talk.
Well, it's all about meeting people where they're at. Even if you don't agree with somebody, if you can have a conversation about them and say, I see why you see it that way. Do you see why I see it this way? Yeah. And meet them where they're at, and you're more likely to be able to change the outcome of that conversation than like what you see a lot with like the stuff with George Floyd happening last year, and everybody just, I mean,
that was a very emotional thing.
All of the closet racists were shown real quick, and so many people were just like on the internet yelling at them, and I'm like, is that gonna stop them? How's that going? Does it really seem to be working? Like, to me, it's more important to really try and understand where they're coming from and understand, like, have compassion for people in the way that, like, you behave a certain way and you believe in the things that you believe in because of all of the events in your life that have led you to this moment. Everybody has that. So you couldn't, I mean, you don't know me. You don't know what events in my life have happened to lead me to believe what I believe now.
Yeah.
And you don't know, it's almost like the butterfly effect too, where like I was raised by people who had events lead up to their lives to raise me the way they raised me, you know? So it's like, it's just this whole butterfly effect where like you really have to have that compassion for people to understand them and then be like, I get it. Here's why I feel this way. Does that change your mind? Yes? No? Either way? Cool.
Experience plays a huge part in how people, develop both their moral and political compass. I mean, going back to like the racism thing, you know, those people are really bad, but like in a way you can almost sympathize with them because usually they're people who are really not intelligent and they're really not people who have had a lot of experience. They've lived in their one place and they have this one view that's been indoctrinated to them or passed down their family. And I mean, ultimately it's pretty pathetic. I mean, their lives are probably going nowhere. You know, I mean, these are assumptions, but I mean, you know, it's like people can change. I'll admit when I was in high school, I grew up in a small town. And I wouldn't say I was a homophobic, but I definitely was not in support of gay marriage. And that's completely changed around. And I think a lot of that had to do with just interacting with homosexuals. Like it broadens, like having that conversation and seeing the other side and being like, hey, you know what? Who gives a shit about what the fuck people do in their bedroom? Like, why do I care? Why is that something that's important to me? You know, it's really all about your journey. And, you know, the steps you take. It's like with music. Putting out, you know, keeping old albums and old shit up there. Like, it's good for people to be able to go through your discography and go through the years and be like, okay, this is how this person's improved. This is what this person thought then. This is them now. you know.
That being said, go listen to "Thank You for Your Patience" by Lady Spade. That was my first hip hop album.
Oh,
it sounds so crazy. So at this point in the band, we were a hip hop band, and then we ended up down to two of us. It was me and the drummer. And so it turned I would make the beats on my keyboard, and he played an acoustic drum set, like a djembe and the little kickbox thing. I don't know what they're called.
Cool.
He had a whole acoustic setup, and so we did an entire album with that. And this was in my first year of school when I was learning audio, and so we literally spent $0 budget on this album. And when you listen to it, you're just like, what? What is happening with the quality of this? However, the lyrics are really good, and the when you saw it live, we honestly had such a following in like the Cedar Valley area. We had such a following, and when we had an album release party, and we sold $400 worth of albums on the first night.
Wow.
Like, we just had such fun. We were fucking crazy. I mean, we dressed up almost like ICP, like fucking face makeup, and it was super like clowny, but with spades, like cards and everything was our theme. So, but when you saw it live, it kind of like showed you that cool experience where like we're doing it on the keyboard and Zach's playing his acoustic drum set, and it had a whole vibe to it. But it didn't transfer well to like if you just go listen to it now, you're like, this sounds like somebody made it in their basement. And I'm like, well, we did. We did do it in the basement. Yeah, check that out. That's interesting.
But you know, I mean, that's the beginnings. Tyler, the Creator's first album was actually recorded in his closet, and he had a mic like hanging down from his co-rack thing. Like,
it's interesting to see the progression too.
Yeah.
Like when I was at that phase, I was still it was almost more like slam poetry, written word styled rapping. And now I'm like not much like that anymore at all. So when I listen to that, I'm like, what was I doing? Was that cool? Did you guys like that? Were you just being supportive?
You know, that is an interesting like branch of hip hop, the slam poetry stuff. I feel like some of it's really good and some of it's really bad. You know, it's hard to like, I don't know. It's interesting to maneuver through all of it. There's actually a really early videotape of Kanye West, and he does the lyrics to Gold Digger in a like a slam poetry. Like he's just up there like, I ain't saying shit gold, you know.
That would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's weird. Looking through how an artist progressed, and like with you, for example, like all the different things you've done, like it all plays a role into how that person, you know, presents themselves as an artist.
Exactly.
Cool. This seems like a pretty good place to wrap it up, I think. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or you want to mention your social? We'll put that in the description. But
yes, at Sterling Banks Baby everywhere, except for Twitter. I'm Sterling Banks 5, but honestly, I don't use it, so I guess follow me Twitter if you want to. I think I've tweeted like one thing, and it was about I was watching The Voice, and I had the closed captions on, and the closed captions were so fucked up. I tweeted something about like, did Blake Shelton do the closed captions, or whoever was drinking out of his cup, and it did nothing. And I was like, I don't understand Twitter.
yeah, that's a weird engine. I've not been on Twitter since like probably 2015. It just seems like, it's just such a toxic.
What is, I suppose, is YouTube your social media of choice then?
Probably Instagram.
Same.
Honestly.
Same. I think it's this age that is very much Instagram. Like, I tried getting on TikTok, and I was like, I don't get it.
She is obsessed with TikTok, and I cannot stand it.
Look.
I got into it after a while. It took me a little bit.
Obsessed. Just because I watch cute animal videos and I send them to you because they're cute.
I just find really dark people to follow on TikTok.
Yeah. That's the thing about it is like 1 out of every 20 TikToks is like fucking hilarious, but like the other, like you hear the same 4 songs over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about Instagram. I know it's really like a curated app and people have their criticisms about it, but I feel like it's what Facebook was in the early days. Like it used to be like purely what this person's doing, what they're up to. They're, you know, because you go on Facebook, I'm off Facebook too, but like you go on Facebook and all it seems to be is just newsfeed. This
Well, and it's just so much arguing.
Yeah,
like all people do is fucking like talk shit to each other, and I'm like, I hate Facebook.
And it's designed literally to like, you know, that conflict like rises in the algorithm, like so it's literally like designed for people to like
Troll each other.
get like this high of like arguing with, because there's something, you know, if you and I were talking on the internet and we were getting into argument, that would look way different than if we were sitting here, you know?
Right? Well, then there's so much misinterpretation too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Hopefully we can turn this world around, but I'm skeptical.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
One podcast at a time.
Sterling Bakes, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, this is the episode, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you guys all been chilling, drinking, all that, having a good time. We'll be back next week.